There has been a long dispute over the territory the Oka Mohawk people inhabit. In 1717, the governor of New France granted Mohawk lands encompassing one of their cemeteries to the Sulpician Fathers Seminary. In 1868, chief of the Oka Mohawk people wrote a letter to the seminary condemning it for illegally holding the land and demanded its return. This led to an attack on the seminary, but produced no end results. In 1936, the seminary sold the remaining territory for development and vacated, and in 1961, a private 9-hole golf course was built on a portion of the Mohawk land. The Mohawks filed suit against its construction, but by the time their case had been heard, much of the land had already been cleared. In 1977, the Mohawks filed an official land claim with the Federal Office of Native Claims regarding the land. The claim was rejected 9 years later as it failed to meet legal criteria, and in 1989, the Oka crisis occurred.
Alright, so now that we've done some research as a class concerning Mohawk culture and the Oka crisis of 1990, we're going to set up a little debate where one party takes on the point of view of the Mohawks of Kanesatake, and the other party is going to be talking about the point of view of the Oka residents. Basically, one will be for the construction and the other group will be against the construction. Do we got it, guys?
Yes.
Yes, Professor.
Can anyone give me a summary of the Oka crisis? Megan?
Well, I wrote a little paragraph, and I wrote that in 1989, the Club de Golf d'Oka announced plans to expand their golf course by an additional 9 holes. This led to the Oka crisis, which occurred primarily between the Mohawks and white residents from the Oka village. It lasted 78 days and included protesters, the army, and the police. The crisis was originally triggered in 1961 when they started building the golf course on a Mohawk cemetery and gradually grew in extremity until the 1989 crisis. There was a lot of violence during this time, and the event proves to be something that remains in every native's memory to this day.
As a teacher, you must promote discussion and the comparison of points of view. Also, an important point is that teachers should also supervise their research and provide them with a variety of resources, including different information sources.
Alright, so which side's which?
We're going to talk about the perspective of the Mohawk communities.
Great.
We're going to talk about the perspective of the industrialists.
Alright, perfect. So let's see how it goes.
So the question that we all have to ask ourselves with regard to this issue is as follows. At what point should society halt its industrial progress in order to accommodate the needs of different cultural groups? The Mohawk people claim to have serious ties to the land, but how far do these ties really stem? We all have connections to our homes, and the Mohawk aren't an exception to this rule, but that doesn't necessarily mean that progress in many of these areas that are inhabited by Canadian Aboriginal peoples should be stilted. Urban expansion is an inevitable part of industrialization, and to hinder that progress is to slow society down as a whole.
Well, I think it's really important to look at the perspectives of the members within the Kanesatake community because they view the event as one of both pain and pride. Pain because of the inevitable turn to violence and outbreak of physical altercations, as well as anger for being so undermined in Canadian culture. Pride because of the feat of having their voice heard nationally, which is often difficult within a highly westernized society. In fact, protests were held far and wide across the country in solidarity with the Mohawk community, with blockades in both British Columbia and Northern Ontario. Current Kanesatake resident Linda Simon experienced the violence firsthand, stating that the common lands had slowly been given away and sold, and there came a point where people weren't going to take it anymore. After a while, you have to take a stand.
Great debate, guys. So you can just put your desks back where they were before. So now that we've taken the time to discuss this crisis from 2 different perspectives, I think we can all understand the importance of incorporating different points of views so that we have an unbiased approach.
It's important to show students how a particular event is experienced differently from one society to another and help them identify major global trends.
Now, how can we relate the events of the 1990 Oka crisis to today? Yes, Catherine?
I have a quote here that answers this question. It says, the 2013 Grand Chief of Oka, Serge Simon, says that while the Mohawk warriors might have inspired people around the world, the aftermath of the crisis led to the social disintegration of the community. It has taken a generation for people to overcome the trauma of the crisis. Oka is what happens when dialogue stops. Also, the First Nations in Ontario encounter many land disputes to this day. For example, there was a case in which the First Nations felt as though they did not receive all land which they were entitled to. So as a result of this, the Ontario First Nations Settlement Agreement was reached in March 2015 and then implemented in April 2015.
Great, that's a really good quote.
According to the QEP, as teachers, you need to help your students to open their minds to the diversity of society and grasp the contemporary world in part by studying some of its problems and issues. This encourages the students to avoid hasty conclusions.